Hey everybody, my name is Mr. Smeeds, and I'm an AP Environmental Science teacher here with Fiveable. One question that's been on my mind in the lead up to this election is what are the environmental consequences of the 2020 election? We've heard a lot about the coronavirus and the short-term economy, stimulus checks, and that's really understandable. But as an AP Environmental Science teacher, I want to take a minute here to walk through with you the environmental plans of both candidates and the climate implications or the climate consequences of both of those plans. So we'll start off with President Trump. If we take a look at President Trump's website, what we'll see is an energy environment achievements page. So this is going to highlight what Trump considers some of his biggest achievements in his first 4 years as president. So the first thing we want to notice here is that he has a strong commitment to the expansion of fossil fuel resources. So these are things like coal, natural gas, and oil. And Trump kind of hangs his hat on being what he calls an advocate or supporter for the working class, and specifically the fossil fuel working class. He makes it well known that he supports coal miners, and that's a base that he considers really important. Another sort of calling card of Trump is the idea that he repeals what he calls costly Obama era environmental protection regulations. And so Trump cites these as being bad for business, as costing corporations too much money because they have to comply with all of these laws and regulations. And so this is something that he's very proud of. And so if we continue to look through the list here, we'll see more and more fossil fuel expansion. And what I want to highlight here, though, at the very end, is his commitment to remove the United States from the U.S. Paris Climate Agreement. And so we'll talk about what that agreement is here in a minute. Before we talk about the Paris Climate Agreement and the environmental science behind both of these plans, we need to take a quick look at Biden's plan. Biden's plan, which was released in July, has two major components. The first is an energy and jobs component. So Biden has made an aggressive commitment to decarbonize the United States energy sector by 2035, meaning that we will slowly wean off and eventually eliminate fossil fuels as an energy source. He's also coupling this with a huge jobs push. So Biden has promised that in certain sectors there will be 1 million jobs created for green energy. So that would be things like electric vehicle charging stations, renewable energy resources like solar and wind power. But he's also coupled this with a commitment to social and environmental justice. So Biden has been very clear that he wants this environmental, energy revolution here to include people that in the past have been marginalized or left behind in these considerations. And so specifically, he's committed to pledge 40% of all of the funding in this spending package to go to communities that are low income and communities of color. So Biden, in addition to committing to sort of decarbonize the energy sector, has also committed to include marginalized groups in this process. One other thing to point out is that Biden has been on the record as saying he would bring the United States back into the Paris Climate Agreement. So we've talked a little bit about fossil fuels and about carbon, but now we have to talk about some of the science here. So what are fossil fuels, and what's the deal with carbon in the atmosphere? So fossil fuels get their name because they are the fossilized remains of plant matter. And so those plant matter get kind of smashed underneath huge sedimentary rock layers over millions and millions of years, and then we dig them up in the form of coal and natural gas and oil, and then we burn them to either create electricity or power our vehicles or make plastic. So they're very useful. We have a ton of uses for fossil fuels. But the problem is that they increase the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So that carbon that was stored under the ground for millions of years is very, very quickly added back to the atmosphere. So what's the problem with that? Well, on Earth, we have a blanket of gases around our planet, and we refer to the warming effect we get from it as the greenhouse effect. And the greenhouse effect is really important for life on Earth. Without it, Earth would be basically a frozen ball, and we couldn't have any life here. But the problem is that it's a really delicate blend of gases. So when we add more carbon dioxide and more methane, which is also a form of carbon, we increase Earth's temperature because we make that warming blanket thicker. And so that blanket of gases traps more heat, and even just a small increase in carbon dioxide will increase the temperature on Earth. And so let's talk now about the Paris Climate Agreement and what it is trying to accomplish. So at this point, the Paris Climate Agreement is an agreement by 195 different countries to basically do everything that they can to avoid warming the Earth by 2 degrees Celsius by the year 2100. And so they have pledged to try to make individual benchmarks for each country. They've pledged to try for developed countries like the United States and much of Europe to help the developing nations make their energy transitions more sustainably. And so again, it's basically just this kind of world commitment and idea that we have to avoid reaching 2 degrees of warming. And so why is that such a big deal? Well, the International Panel on Climate Change has put out some projections that conclude that 2 degrees of global warming by the year 2100 could have some really problematic consequences. So some of those would be a high risk of threatened ecosystems. So we may lose ecosystems like the tundra or like many of the polar ice sheets. And so as that happens, we also have the likelihood of increased extreme weather events. So this is a picture of a heat wave that struck India and was so hot that it started to melt the paint on the cement. And so this is obviously a problem for human health, for agriculture, plants and animals. We also have the risk of increased flooding. So as the atmosphere warms, so does the ocean, and we have something called thermal expansion. So the molecules in the ocean actually get a little bit further apart, and that's able to raise sea levels along with those melting polar ice sheets. And so we have the increased risk of people experiencing floods as the earth warms. There's one more problem that we have to be aware of here, and that's the possibility that we kick off something called a positive feedback loop in this tundra ecosystem that I've talked about. And so this is the idea that the permafrost, this area of permanently frozen ground, may start to thaw out. And what happens is we get these big pools of water, and there's organic matter like grass that decomposes underneath those pools of water. Now that gives off a lot of carbon dioxide and methane, which, if you remember back to the greenhouse effect, is going to warm Earth's climate. As that warms the climate, it melts the permafrost faster and releases more methane and more carbon dioxide. So there's the potential that we start to make Earth so hot that we can't reverse some of these processes. And so right now you may be thinking, whoa, this sounds pretty bad. Where's the hope, right? Now, the good news is that we do have a plan. We have an agreement, the Paris Climate Agreement, that is targeted at reaching 1.5 degrees of warming and avoiding that 2-degree mark that is so potentially dangerous. If we see in this projection here, if we are to peak our fossil fuel consumption in the year 2020 and make a radical decrease in our fossil fuel consumption and our carbon dioxide emissions, by the year 2040 completely eliminating it, we have the potential to make sure that we don't hit 2 degrees of global climate change. But if you notice in the red, if we continue to elevate our levels of carbon dioxide release, we don't peak until 2025, and then we start to drop off. That drop has to be so much faster, and our pullback from using fossil fuels for so many things has to be much, much, much more rapid in order to still avoid that 2 degrees of warming. So this is a really critical election because this is the year that the International Panel on Climate Change has concluded is really important to start decreasing our carbon emissions. Now, if we don't start decreasing them this year and it waits until later, again, all hope is not lost, but that pullback has to be that much more dramatic. So from watching this video, I hope you understand the importance of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere and the importance of starting to very soon, aka this year, start to drastically reduce our emissions of those greenhouse gases. I hope you also got a brief run through on the candidates' plans and how they would impact the release of greenhouse gases and global warming. If you found this video interesting, make sure to check out Fiveable on all of these social medias here, and then make sure to mark your calendar because in the second semester there's going to be an AP Environmental Science course run by Fiveable where you can learn all of the information you need to do well in the AP exam, but also the information you need to critically evaluate elections and just everyday news coverage. Thanks for watching, guys.